Welcome, guys, to the review of the Monaco Grand Prix. And what a race we got. Monaco, you delivered, baby. That was absolutely brilliant. Edge of your seat stuff throughout from start to finish. And we'll just run through a quick brief of the race. And then we'll got some special drives from some of the guys this weekend. And they might not all have finished in the top three because, well, some special ones. Let's get to it. Well, there was drama right from the start. Max Verstappen didn't get away well. We were talking about the start. It was built up. Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli alongside each other. Max had nothing to lose. But he lost his car right from the start. It just didn't get away well at all. And he had to retire. He managed to get it around. And that was all she wrote for Max Verstappen. Such a shame, because to lose him throughout this race is one of the races where you really want someone like Max in it, because he's ever the guy that just hangs it out and picks something off when it might not quite be there. He done a phenomenal job, generally speaking, and he's one where you thought he could have picked up a nick to win somewhere, potentially just by hanging out and waiting for a red flag or doing something really spontaneous because he had nothing to lose. But we didn't get to see that, sadly. And then it was his teammate, actually, who actually got a good start, but then had a problem with his car. And then he was managing that throughout. We then got the DNF of Valtteri Bottas, who had car problems. We then had the DNF of Ollie Berman, who was called in, and it was something, a bit of a theme with the cars really struggling around the track of Monaco. I think it was just managing tyres or temperature was a real problem for a number of cars. Ollie Berman then had to retire. Lando Norris then started developing problems with his car, and you thought, could he manage towards the end of the Grand Prix, quite like Isaac Hadjar? And Hadjar's, he was just holding his breath, weren't he? Even with him, he was complaining like this car's going to explode at points throughout the Grand Prix, but he's held on. And for now, because he's under investigation, held on to a podium position. We've seen Lando Norris' car break down again, another battery issue similar to what we've seen in Canada. His car effectively shut off, but this time he did manage to make it to the pit lane. And then we got the drama. Lance Stroll, what looked like he just ran onto some marbles and into the wall at the final corner. Well, just as we got a safety car, because just the safety car, because who'd broke down? It was Lance Stroll into the wall. We got a safety car. Charles Leclerc on the safety car restart did the same thing Lance Stroll did. And then we got a red flag because the track was actually breaking up, and we could have seen an end to the race there. But the race stewards, to their credit, said, we'll carry on racing. It was off the racing line. And if you knew it was there, it's kind of like avoiding a puddle. You shouldn't have hit it. But on the restart, Charles Leclerc met the wall, and that was all she wrote. He was in third place, kind of annoyed at that point because we've seen a number of cars throughout the race getting pit lane speeding penalties. We've seen Lewis Hamilton get one, but he pitted and took his penalty, and they called Charles Leclerc in right behind Lewis Hamilton, which meant that Charles had to wait. Lewis had served a penalty, and he was at that point a net second because he would have passed Lewis, but for the 5-second penalty. He was annoyed because he kind of wanted to just stay out longer. That didn't happen. And then on the safety restart, he met the end of a pretty horrible home race for him here this weekend. Didn't blame it on the track. It said it was just purely down to the brakes. There's some issue with his braking where it braked harder at the front end than he did expected. That's not how hard he pressed the pedal, and got no braking on the rear, and he met the wall. And if you've got problems with your braking, it's going to be in the wall here in Monaco. You don't really have much runoff. He used a few of them runoff areas throughout free practice. So problem he's had all weekend, and that saw him come to an end. Right at the end, we got the incident with Carlos Sainz, who was running in the points. got hit by Nico Hulkenberg, and that saw him spin, and then he got another tap by Franco Colapinto. No penalty for Franco, though, but there was a 10-second penalty for Nico Hulkenberg for taking out Carlos Sainz, who was in the points at that time. And that's just really, really disappointing for Carlos Sainz, because the Williams boys managed to get themselves into a point, but at doing so, they gifted a place of Arvid Lindblad ahead of Alex Albon, who took the opportune move to get a pass on Alex as he was trying to keep a gap to let Sainz run away with it. Trying to do last year's manoeuvres, wasn't he, where he's held up the cars behind, let his teammate get a pit stop in, and it was Arvid that got past. And at the time, it looked like it's not too bad, because Arvid, when he pits, will mean Alex will pass him again. But obviously, we got the red flag, which resulted in Arvid keeping ahead of Alex. So a pretty frustrating race for the Williams boys. But so much drama, so many penalties. We've seen a penalty for George Russell. He got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane as well, compounded because he pit behind Kimi Antonelli under the safety car, and the team told him not to, but he came in, they changed his tyres, he didn't serve his penalty, and then he got a quite harsh drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And he's actually said he pressed the speed limiter button before the line, and so unsure what the problem was, if there was a software issue, who said, and that's meant he's been speeding. We've seen Oscar Piastri get a penalty, Lewis Hamilton, Stroll, Piastri, you name it. Pierre Gasly, I think, got 2. A penalty galore, really, with the speed lane, and we've not really seen that very, very often at all. Some saying, or Lewis Hamilton saying, I think it might have been the angle that he'd gone into the pit lane and that was catching them out, but Hadjar saying that's not something that was discussed pre-race by the steward. So we'll see what happens as a result of that. Oscars, the team said the penalty was fair. It was on them. Their data showed that Oscar was speeding, and that potentially has cost him a podium position in the end, hasn't it? Because he's lost out to Isaac Hadjar. Drama throughout this whole Grand Prix. You were on the edge of your seats because you just didn't know how the penalties will fall, might not fall. But one thing was for sure where there was no drama, and that was right up at the top. It was Kimi Antonelli with a flawless drive from lights to flag twice. Put up with a safety car, put up with a red flag and a second start where, we were all talking about the troubles that they've had in that Mercedes. But he was phenomenal, absolutely flying. The race pace that this kid had was second to none. He was gone. He had a 30-second lead on the second place Ferrari at one point, and then told to calm down. But I think he was just in flow state, absolutely flying. Even at the end, pumping in fastest lap of the race. He won still by 6 or 7 seconds from Lewis Hamilton, even with 7 or 8 laps towards the end. It just shows the pace that this kid had. He was flawless, and what a statement he has laid down here this weekend. Everybody's talking about the rookie. He's going to fail at some point, but if you can keep this pressure off and just let the performance and the driving doing the talking, and that's easier said than done. So far, all the bad luck has fallen on George Russell's side of the garage. But even then, the kid came here this weekend, and to stick it on pole position where it didn't look like he had it in the car, he was flying. He was flying in the race. It's an absolutely phenomenal drive. And one way you think this kid's really, really got it. You can see what Toto Wolff was looking at and thinking about. When he put this kid into the seat, in the high pressure seat, everybody's saying it's probably too early for you, young guy. And now he's the youngest Monaco winner, beats Lewis Hamilton to that title. And funny enough, they were both 1 and 2 on the podium. He now leads Lewis Hamilton in the championship by 66 points, 68 points ahead of his teammate, who's now in third place, George Russell. And what a lead. And you just think, where will this run stop? Because he goes to Barcelona next. And with this momentum and the confidence that he's carrying, and the car again will be good around Barcelona because they've got the good downforce that everybody else kind of hasn't got. And he just looks an unstoppable force. And who would stop him from being 6 out of 6 with another pole to Light's victory? This was a proper statement drive from the young kid. He's got real talent. And where it all seemed to fall apart from those around him, he just was flawless throughout that Grand Prix and drove absolutely phenomenally. And hats off to him for the win. Lewis Hamilton, well, he was in second place and didn't really have the pace early doors, chewed through his tyres really, really quickly, and he was one of the first to pit onto the hards 7 laps earlier than his teammate, 8 or 9 laps early. Then Kimi Antonelli then got the 5-second pit stop penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and he thought it would be a third place finish for him when it was all said and done because Charles Leclerc closed that gap. They both pit under the safety cars, which made sense. Especially on Lewis's side, he took a 5-second penalty, got the soft tyres on, and because he was ahead of Charles Leclerc and they both pitted under safety car, that 5-second penalty was dealt with, and then he was clear to the end. There's a bit of drama potentially with a safety car infringement with keeping the 10 places, but because there was no real... He wasn't really holding anyone back by not being 10 seconds in front. It wasn't exactly a car on his gearbox, quite like Isaac Hadjar. You could say he maybe got away with it, but I think it was a fair call, especially on Lewis's side, that he didn't get a penalty for that. Isaac didn't get a penalty for his either. So if you're not going to give Isaac one, you definitely can't give Lewis one because Lewis wasn't holding anyone up, whereas Isaac did, you'd say, potentially hold George Russell up, who had a 20-second penalty anyway. So I think maybe that's why they took a view of not giving Isaac Hadjar a penalty on that one. Although he has got a red flag infringement, Isaac Hadjar. So still his podium position is still up in the air on that one. But back to Lewis. He's now second in the championship. He's got a massive gap to Kimi Antonelli, but he's doing the job, isn't he? He's doing it out on track. To be second is really 2 podiums back-to-back, 2 second places. So the man is flying, and the confidence, really good to see him back in the car. And he's come here this weekend. He's out-qualified Charles Leclerc in Monaco. The first time Charles Leclerc has been out-qualified by a teammate around here at this circuit. And he pulled off a pretty solid result in the end. Got lucky, you've got to say, with the team calling him and Leclerc in under the safety car. And then he got away with that 5-second penalty because otherwise it would have been a third place. And I think he might have been a little bit disappointed with that. But you take your luck, and a second place is absolutely brilliant. Third place, man, what a hell of a drive from Isaac Hadjar, because he had a car that was broken from almost lap 2, down on engine power, had a problem with changing gears. His teammate had already retired. At one point thought the car will explode, and you thought this is just a matter of time before he gets overtaken. Held on George Russell for an absolute age with a broken car, and then just kept it together. And it's fallen in his place. Obviously, George with his penalty, he stayed out under the safety car, and he was already ahead of George Russell. Because of that, the red flag helped him. He could change tyres and kept position ahead of George, but then didn't get the best start. He was struggling with that bit. George passed him, and he had that penalty to take. So got away with that one. He's only got this red flag infringement over his head now, and fingers crossed for him that gets cleared, because it's such a well-deserved podium for carrying a broken car, being persistent, being quick still with that broken car, to come home and snatch a podium. Boy, was that hard work for him, and a well-deserved P3. He was absolutely brilliant. Another shout out, really. I'm going to go skip P4. It was a quiet one for Oscar Piastri in his race. But script to Liam Lawson, because this guy, his car looked like it might not make the grid. He had minutes to go before before they got that car ready for the race. It looked like he might not make it, and he got the car onto the grid, and well, he drove a pretty solid race to come home in P5. Obviously could move up a position, but what a drive. Really, really good. And consistent, solid weekend from him. His teammate Arvid Lindblad as well. What a shout out from him, because he just went for the Hail Mary, waited for safety car. The red flag came instead. And that meant he didn't have to stop. He got to switch tyres, and that meant he's picked up a P6. Boy, you've got to see, brilliant for him, but you've got to feel sorry for Pierre Gasly, because this guy has got 2 speeding infringements in the pit lane, which could cost him 10 seconds. He's just said he's really, really sure that he pressed the pit lane speed limiter button before the line, and really doesn't understand how he's got his penalty. And he's got 2 of them, which kicked him off a podium. And he was on for a podium here, and he's generally been best of the rest this weekend. He would have been with that P3, and it's really, really harsh for Pierre Gasly. Nothing they can do on that. Is it a faulty software? Is it a faulty speed limiter gun? I mean, sure, the FIA will look into that, because there's 6 or 7 penalties for pit lane speeding, and we don't get that very often. So we're looking to see if the FIA clear that up. Let's hope they do, because there's Pierre Gasly. I mean, if it is found to be a faulty speed gun, what a kick in the teeth, because he's lost a podium out in Monaco through no fault of his own, and he proved a pretty solid race for him. Another shout out I've got to give to is Sergio Perez. What a drive. He looked really on it this weekend. He was P14 in one of the practice sessions. Didn't go quite his way in qualifying, but he's picked up a point in the end. He is under investigation for a false start. He had the same investigation at the start of the Grand Prix, but was cleared of that. Let's hope he's cleared of that on the second restart, and he can hold on to a point in the Cadillac, because these points are going to be few and far between, and he's got to pick them up when there's chaos in Grand Prix like this. And what a drive to pick up a P10. Fantastic job from him. And another star, like I said, that's just not in the top 3, but drove a phenomenal race. 2 or 3 absolutely brilliant drives this weekend. And what a Grand Prix. We got absolutely everything in there. 2 race starts, faulty starts, penalties, drama. We got some overtaking that we didn't quite see early doors with Sergio Perez. Started on the soft tyres. He was racy, fighty early doors, and he's got his reward with a podium. Let's see what happens on that one. We got a broken track. We just had absolutely everything. Safety cars, red flag, 2 race starts in Monaco, and a really, really good job. We've got 3 guys on the podium that absolutely deserve it. Kimi Antonelli goes away with this one with a huge lead in the championship now. That's 50 points he's gained on George Russell in 2 Grand Prix. And it just goes to show that it's as easily as it can switch in Kimi Antonelli's favour, it can also switch in George Russell's favour. But you definitely want to be in Kimi Antonelli's shoes, don't you, if you're looking at this championship. He's 66 points ahead of the man who joined him on the podium, Lewis Hamilton. George Russell will hope that some luck falls his way soon. He's got another Grand Prix coming up in a week's time, so we can hope that he can put that to bed pretty quickly. But what a Grand Prix. Monaco, we've talked about it being a Grand Prix where it's, you know, is it worthy of being on the calendar? This weekend showed why it absolutely does. A brilliant Grand Prix from start to finish. It was fantastic. If you've not watched the highlights, go and watch them somewhere. But that are my thoughts. Watch out for the driver ratings video coming early next week. And then the preview for the Barcelona Grand Prix. And watch out for the watch-alongs next week as well. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.